Hi, and welcome. You're listening to the X22 Report. My name is Dave, and this is episode 3878, and today's date is April 7th, 2026, and the title of the episode is IMF says the quiet part out loud. Trump is bringing the old economic system down. Now, we all know Wall Street doesn't lose money on sell-offs. You do. They create the panic, wait for you to dump your position out of fear and scoop it up at a discount. The big banks aren't selling their gold, they're buying yours. Every time the headlines scream, regular people sell, every time regular people sell, the institutions are right there, waiting with open hands. You built portfolio insurance for a reason. Don't let a red day hand it over to the people who cause it. That's why I tell people to talk to Noble Gold Investments. They will help you build a long-term plan and, more importantly, help you stick to it when the noise gets loud. The minors' up and downs, that's weather. The long-term trend, that's climate. And the climate has been favoring gold for 5,000 years. So the next time you see a dip and you feel that knot in your stomach, ask yourself one question. Am I making this decision, or is Wall Street making it for me? Don't let them shake you out of the position you built to protect yourself. That's exactly what they want. And right now, all new qualified accounts receive a 10th ounce American Gold Eagle as a thank you. Real gold in your hands, that's the whole point. Go to X22Gold.com. That is X22Gold.com, or just click the link in the description. And remember, past performance may not be indicative of future results. Investing in precious metals involves risk. Consult your financial advisor before making investment decisions. Let's get right into the economic collapse financial news. Now, the deep state, the corrupt politicians, the private central bank, the World Economic Forum. You can see that they are very panicked in what Trump is doing. He's removing the Green New Scam, basically removing everything that they set up. Yes, there's parts of Europe that are still following this path, Australia, New Zealand, you name it. But here in the United States, you can see that Trump has pretty much backed us out of all of that. And what he's doing right now is he's removing everything the deep state central bank has set up, because their plan was to bring us into this new economic system. And what Trump is doing is he's shutting down the old economic system and bringing us into a new system. And while he's doing this, he's putting a lot of the pieces into place, freeing up energy worldwide. If you really look at what Trump is doing in the Middle East and with Venezuela, he is now making it possible where anyone can get the energy. Remember, to control energy and to control the prices and to keep the old system alive, you need to control the flow of energy. So if you shut down Venezuela, if you place sanctions on Russia, and you control the Middle East, then you control the oil supply around the world, because all you have to do is control the Middle Eastern countries. That's what they set up going way back to the 70s when we went from the gold standard to the petrodollar system. Now that Trump is now removing those blocks and he's opened up Venezuela, oil is now flowing to the rest of the world. Soon, when Iran is taken care of and the Strait of Hormuz, international waters, is then opened up, there is no more fear tax, which means oil is going to flow around the world fear tax free. While that is happening, Trump then is going to remove the sanctions on Russia, which will then allow Russia to move into many different markets, and oil will flow freely from Russia, which means we will have an incredible amount of oil around the world. And as the United States and Canada with Alaska, you could see that oil is going to be very, very abundant, which means the supply is going to be there and oil prices are going to drop dramatically. If oil prices drop dramatically, what happens? Energy is much, much cheaper. What happened to the entire green push? It falls apart. Remember, the entire mission was to take everything from Europe, from the United States, from Canada, and the rest of the world, and shift it to China. This is not happening anymore. And you could see that Trump now is positioning the United States to shift away from the central bank fiat currency. This is why the IMF has come out, and they're very, very panicked about stablecoin, about the blockchain, because this would pretty much destroy their entire system that they set up. And they're pretty much saying that. So when you start to look at this, you could see what Trump is doing right now. He's preparing the entire world, and he's undoing everything that they did back in the 70s. And yes, he'll go back to 1913 and actually end up removing the central bank in the end. But when you look at Europe, you could see as Trump moves us away from the old system and shuts down the energy blockage, you can see that Europe now is going to be going through an energy crisis. Actually, if you go back to the 70s, when they actually placed us on the petrodollar, didn't we have an energy crisis then? Well, we're having an energy crisis as Trump removes us from the old economic system. That's what Europe is now experiencing. See, Trump, he made sure that the United States didn't really feel the effects of the energy crisis. Yes, prices are going to go up, but they're still cheaper than Biden. But we're not going to have shortages because the United States is self-sufficient. That is the very big difference. He did this on purpose. And even Viktor Orban is now admitting that Europe is heading towards one of the worst energy crises of all times. We're seeing drastic price hikes, and if we do not take measures on time, we're going to see a shortage of energy, oil, and gas. Now, do they have to see a shortage? No. It's very, very simple solution if they just assist Trump in opening the international body of water, which is the Strait of Hormuz. If they do that, there really is no energy crisis. Actually, they're creating it by not assisting Trump in all of this. But in the end, as Trump opens up the Strait of Hormuz, the energy crisis is going to completely and utterly disappear, and you're going to see a gusher, as Trump would say, of oil across the world. Because once again, the fear is going to be gone, the control systems are going to be gone, and as Trump then opens up Russian oil market, you're going to see a lot more energy across the world. So this whole energy crisis is going to disappear. But again, we're removing the old system. Just like they brought us onto the petrodollar system, he's now removing us from the system that they created. And I think in the end, what they're going to do is what Trump is going to do is he's going to actually then go back to the Constitution and bring us back to the gold standard when all is said and done. And you can see this is actually where we're headed. And what's very, very interesting is you could see that Trump now is going to be hitting Canada very, very hard. Remember, all these countries benefit from the United States. They've been ripping us off for a very long time, and the tariffs were always one way. And what's very interesting is that you could see that Trump might have set up Canada in forcing them to get rid of Trudeau and bring on Carney, because he knew that Carney was a central banker, and he was hoping the deep state players, the central bankers, would bring a central banker in to basically counter everything that Trump is trying to do, which means it's going to completely and utterly backfire. So let me just read what Rich Toronto put out, and he's talking about Canada and the left individuals within Canada. The leftists have used people's feelings for Trump and what's happening in America to move people further left through fear tactics and Trumpophobia. It started during the last Canadian election, where it seems like the Liberal campaign strategy was to draw similarities between Poilievre and Trump, leveraging the TDS of Canadians to turn them against the Conservatives. Then the term Maple MAGA was introduced again by the Liberals as a way of scaring people away from voting Conservative. The Liberals were aware of how divisive Trump was and leveraged his comments about the 51st state as a way of turning people to the left. Every single thing Trump said or did, they were able to convince Canadians that Poilievre was on board with. Every single thing Canadians disliked about Trump, the Liberals were able to convince Canadians that Poilievre was the same. Canadians didn't elect Carney because they were voting for Carney. He was elected because Canadians were voting against Trump, or against the guy that the Liberals convinced them was Trump. And now Canada is stuck with a prime minister who's far, far worse than they believe Poilievre was. And they're still so filled with hate and TDS that they vote for him again tomorrow. Well, just another POG guy put this out and responded to this and said, this is a good thing, because when we crush Canada's economy at first, they will blame Trump, rightfully so. But as the pain builds, they'll be forced to turn introspective. That pain threshold is unfortunately far past a run of the mill recession. It's 200% tariffs, setting the price of inbound energy at half off market price with a take it or leave it ultimatum and no alternative infrastructure to export it elsewhere. Pain is coming. I wish it wasn't necessary, but decoupling isn't a pleasant process. Elbows up. And yes, you're going to see a huge decoupling between Canada and the United States. And it looks like Trump was hoping they bring in a central banker to do just that. And that's exactly what they're doing. And yes, Canada is going to be hurting for quite a while. Maybe it will become the 51st state. We'll have to wait and see. Now, the other thing that we've been talking about is that Trump now has been dismantling the entire climate agenda. And you have to remember, the world will eventually follow what the U.S. is doing. Actually, if you go back a little bit in time when they were pushing the vaccine passports, as soon as it was ruled it was unconstitutional in this country, what happened? All the other countries started to back off. They could have kept going with it, but they didn't. The same thing is going to happen with climate. And actually, I think a lot of the European nations are starting to realize is that they made a very bad decision. And now they see the writing on the wall that maybe we shouldn't have gotten rid of all our infrastructure and gone windmills, solar, and everything like that. Because remember, their entire agenda was to shift everything to China. Now they see the world is shifting in a different direction. But like we said before, Trump now basically got rid of the entire climate agenda. And Trump, he put this out on Truth. He said, fewer experts see climate change as a global security threat. So fewer geopolitical experts see climate change as an urgent global security threat, but many still expect to see conflict over water access in the near term. In an Atlantic Council survey of nearly 450 experts, 80% expect the world to become hotter over the next decade, and fewer than half think global greenhouse gas emissions have peaked. But whereas 2 years ago, half of this group of experts expected climate change to be the chief driver of global political cooperation, now less than 20% share the view, and only 17% see climate change as a top threat to global prosperity. Yet 64% think a war over access to fresh water is likely before 2036. Now, we all know Wall Street doesn't lose money on sell-offs. You do. They create the panic, wait for you to dump your position out of fear and scoop it up at a discount. The big banks aren't selling their gold, they're buying yours. Every time the headlines scream, regular people sell, every time regular people sell, the institutions are right there, waiting with open hands. You built portfolio insurance for a reason. Don't let a red day hand it over to the people who cause it. That's why I tell people to talk to Noble Gold Investments. They will help you build a long-term plan and, more importantly, help you stick to it when the noise gets loud. The minors' up and downs, that's weather. The long-term trend, that's climate. And the climate has been favoring gold for 5,000 years. So the next time you see a dip and you feel that knot in your stomach, ask yourself one question. Am I making this decision or is Wall Street making it for me? Don't let them shake you out of the position you built to protect yourself. That's exactly what they want. And right now, all new qualified accounts receive a 10th ounce American Gold Eagle as a thank you. Real gold in your hands, that's the whole point. Go to X22Gold.com. That is X22Gold.com, or just click the link in the description. And remember, past performance may not be indicative of future results. Investing in precious metals involves risk. Consult your financial advisor before making investment decisions. In part due to the global shift from fossil fuels to alternative energy sources, a majority of experts said they expect China to be the world's dominant economic power in the coming decade. That just proves the point right there. Because think about it, if Europe goes green, which they were forcing, they were pushing fear, and Australia did the same, New Zealand did the same, and actually the U.S. did, China would be the world's dominant economic power in the coming decade. But Trump now is shifting everything, and this is not going to happen. Now he's freeing up the energy worldwide, making it very, very cheap, which means the U.S., since they got rid of all the climate crap, we're going to have cheap energy to compete against China. Europe, Australia, New Zealand, they're going to be struggling because they went down the wrong path. And look what Trump has done in this country. He put this out on Truth and says, Trump allies near total victory in wiping out U.S. climate regulation. Basically, the regulation has been removed, and now the U.S. is detaching itself from the entire agenda of the deep state players, which means now we have China, we have the United States, and those other countries, they're now trapped in this situation. Soon, they're going to be reversing everything that they've been trying to do. Not just yet, but in the end, they will. Actually, they will be struggling. So either they can purchase their oil, their gas from the United States, most likely get it from the Strait of Hormuz or Venezuela or Russia. They will have a choice because there'll be tons of energy out there. And China will have to purchase the oil at market prices, just like everybody else. So basically, everyone's going to be on an even playing field. I think the United States is going to be a little bit better off because we'll be energy independent, where China has to actually get the oil from all other places because, again, they're dependent on other countries for that. So we actually have the upper hand compared to China. And Trump now is shifting us away from the old economic system that they wanted to bring us into, the old economic system that we're in today. And you can see the Fed, they're still pushing the idea that what's going on in Iran is going to drive up inflation. Because, of course, energy is part of inflation. But again, when you remove the energy factor, the inflation never went away. The value of the Federal Reserve note, which is not a U.S. dollar, it's a Federal Reserve note, has lost 98% of its value, which means that inflation doesn't go away. Energy can be brought down very, very low to actually mitigate the inflation that we actually feel. And basically, they're letting everyone know that they think inflation is going to go much, much higher. Boy, are they in for a huge surprise, because as soon as this excursion, as Trump would say, or mission is over, you're going to see energy drop like we've never seen before. And then the Fed is going to be trapped in all of this. But think about it. As we're experiencing inflation, as the federal money is cut off, because, again, Trump is shrinking the government. He's going to be shutting down the central bank system. We won't be borrowing the way we are borrowing today. Again, you have to remember Trump is using the central bank system against them, but he's not taking that money and giving it to all the blue states. And you can see that the D's, they want to tax more and more people to get that money. It's a gigantic scam. You see, if they can't get the money any other way, they have to tax the people. And now they're trying to move into unrealized capital gains, which is absolutely ridiculous. Cynical Publius explains. Taxing unrealized gains, capital gains, is like taxing people on salary they might earn in the future. Cynical gives us a little example here and says, oh, you are a gastroenterologist? Our projections suggest you'll earn $10 million over the next 10 years. So for 2026, we will levy an income tax against you of $1 million. What do you say about that? You just finished your internship and have nothing but student loan bills. Tough. Pay up or go to jail. I know that sounds nuts, but it really is basically the same thing. So now they're going to enslave you with taxes for money that you haven't even earned yet. That's what they're trying to do. Remember, if they take it from stock, if they take it from anything, you haven't really earned that money. It's just on paper. So if you lose, let's say the stock market, unrealized gain, if you lose that money next year, you are taxed on the money that you never even received, and you have to pay on that. It's absolutely ridiculous. It's just another form of slavery. And that's what they're trying to do now, which it will not work, because in the end, what is Trump doing? He's moving us away from their old system. That's what we're witnessing right now. And if you look at the government jobs, you can see he is shrinking the government jobs at an historic pace. The Kobisi letter on X put this out and said, the federal government shed 18,000 jobs in March, down to 2.66 million, the lowest since 1966. This marks the 14th consecutive monthly decline. Since the beginning of 2025, the federal government has cut 352,000 jobs, reducing its workforce by nearly 12%. As a percent of total employment, federal jobs are down to 1.67%, the lowest on record. By comparison, in the 1960s, this percentage averaged 4.2%. The federal workforce has never been this small, and it's going to go even smaller. Think about it, because, again, we're shifting from the central bank system to what? The tariff system, where we bring income in from the outside to fund the government, to fund everything that we want to do inside of this country. This is not money laundering. This is not the criminal syndicate system. So do we need all of this that they've created? No, we do not. And that's why Trump is getting rid of it. But I think Joy Reid pretty much said the quiet part out loud of exactly what Trump is doing. And she kind of has a problem with it. She says their plan, zero income tax, zero regulation, earn as much as you want. Your family inherits it all. Yeah, that's what we had when the country was created. That's what the founding fathers wanted. You work hard, You keep all the money that you work for. When you pass away, you handed it down to your family members. The government didn't get anything. It was none of the government's business. They never wanted the government to take your money. They went through this. That's why they fought a revolutionary war, because the government kept taking and taking and taking. Remember, taxation without representation? Well, once again, we're seeing the same thing right now. And yes, this is exactly what we want to happen. Andrew Eisker says, she's describing the first 75% of Americans' history, 1607 to 1913, and nothing is more terrifying to her. And he's absolutely right. But you can see, who's terrified? The IMF. The IMF is panicking, warns tokenization could bring crypto risks into global financial markets. So by moving assets like money, bonds, and funds onto shared blockchains, transactions can settle instantly, cutting out intermediaries and reducing delays that define today's markets. I wonder if that's why Trump says maybe we won't have these antiquated banks anymore. Because will we need them? No, we won't need intermediaries anymore. The report points to stablecoins. Isn't that interesting? Tokens whose value is pegged to fiat currency as a key bridge between crypto and traditional finance. Do you think Trump is going to be using stablecoins to back the US dollar in the end? Absolutely. These could widely become settlement assets across tokenized platforms. Still, the reliability depends on reserves and redemption systems, leaving them exposed to runs under stress. The IMF also warned that faster automated markets could amplify volatility, while smart contracts that trigger margin calls or liquidation may accelerate sell-offs during downturns. They're very, very panicked about the stablecoins, about the blockchain, because, again, they lose control, and that's what this is all about. And now they're panicking over all of this because they see where Trump is bringing all of this. Remember, they would rather have the central bank have a central bank digital currency where it's completely and utterly centralized and they can control everything, where they can actually shut down your bank account at a moment's notice. Using a system like this, it decentralizes everything, which means they don't have control over it. That's really what they're telling you. They have lost control over the system and they don't like it. So they're going to try to stop this every step of the way. And as Trump continually pushes against their old system and basically dismantles it and starts to shift us into the new system, they will try to strike back as hard as they possibly can. But when you take a look at what they have created, you can see what they have done. Because I do believe that most of the debt that we have today was created via fraud, created now because of Trump is fighting a rebellion, and I do believe we've been funding the rest of the world. And John Conrad V asks very simple questions about where all this money is going, and maybe this is why we have a problem in this country. What if America is already far richer than anyone in the swamp is allowed to admit? What if the real drag on the republic isn't taxes, isn't debt, isn't even the deficit, it's Europe? What if NATO was never a mutual defense pact, but a 75-year subscription America forgot to cancel? What if burden sharing is the most expensive euphemism in the English language? What if the city of London cabal is draining our banks? What if the advice from the globalists is terrible advice that's costing us big? What if every European basing agreement, every forward deployed brigade, every Ramstein runway, every Aviano hangar, every Soda Bay pier is a tax American workers pay so Berlin can run a welfare state and Paris can run a 34-hour week? What if foreign aid to Europe isn't aid, it's tribute flowing the wrong way? What if transporting the vast majority of trade on European-owned ships costs more than we realize? What if the NGO archipelago in Brussels, Geneva, and the Hague is just a money laundering loop where U.S. taxpayers' dollars get rinsed through a civil society conference and return as lectures about our democracy? What if the UN isn't a parliament of man? It's a Manhattan timeshare with a diplomatic place, an accounting black hole, and a human rights council chaired by people who jail you for tweeting this? What if the rules-based international order was always code for Americans build it, Americans pay for it, Americans bleed for it, and Europeans grade it? What if 36 trillion in debt looks a lot smaller the second you stop underwriting a continent that sneers at you in 3 languages? What if you zeroed out the European line, the NATO line, the UN line, the NGO line, and woke up tomorrow in a country with the fiscal headroom to rebuild every shipyard, every foundry, every rail line, every Navy hull we've let rot since the Cold War ended? What if American tourists went to American cathedrals, American opera, American museums, American cities instead? I'm not saying I believe all of it. I'm saying maybe, just maybe, we could pay down all our debt and wouldn't have to pay taxes at all if we cut Europe loose. And yes, that's what this is all about. It's not just Europe. It's the other internal deep state system that they've been using our money for. And that's why Trump now is cracking down on the money laundering scheme. And he's about to shut it all down and shift us into a brand new economic system, a system that no longer uses the central bank system, where there's checks and balances, where everything is tracked, and the people no longer have to pay with their hard-earned labor. Everything is about to change, and Trump is changing it. Listen, everyone, thanks a lot for listening. Be well, be safe, and especially be prepared. Thanks a lot.